right, we are back with
Yes.
another live stream, another Exit Liquidity 2.0 live. And for now, we got just me and Bacon on right now. So
Yeah. How you doing?
but we might have Dan joining eventually, and we might also have Fabio joining. So we will see what happens. I know who is it? Foo Hat has been he's been commenting a lot.
He's been Foo Hatting.
You've been very patient, Foo Hat. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very
I
much.
thank you, the
So,
viewer, for being here.
and now you have all of our dedicated attention, Foo Hat. So, whatever Foo Hat wants to talk about, as long as it is concerning cybersecurity. So, no. Oh man. So, Bacon, how's it going, man? How you doing?
Been pretty busy. Yeah. So I'll probably should have said this behind the scenes. Like I'll probably be here for a bit, and then like once the better firepower for this topic show up, I'll
So I'm gonna
probably
get
head down.
ditched.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
It's gonna
no,
be me
you'll
and
have better quality, and I'm surprised like no one has like come out with videos being like, who is this clown? Because in most cases,
It's because nobody messes with Bacon.
nah.
You can't do that.
Yeah.
Oh man. So we were talking a little bit beforehand, but do you have any experience with the cybersecurity field or like research into cybersecurity at all?
Uh, my past experience has been like banging rocks at best and eating rocks at worst. so uh
Okay.
so yeah, comment section. Feel free to be like, who this clown at least admits that he doesn't know. But yeah, like when it comes to tech, like hard and software, I'm reminded of an old Bill Gates quote, like something to the effect of maybe tech should perpetually trade at a discount or a heavy discount because it's so easy for a service, a software, or any sort of hardware to like just randomly some new novelty or some competitor drastically changes the landscape and either slashes your cash flows or like damages your profit altogether and you're completely screwed. So maybe you should have a higher discount. But that being said, though, like if you have an old timey value bias, like I kind of lean towards, these companies, like the 1990s, weren't that like long ago, and yeah, we can name some big boy names, but we also got some like respectable, mid and smaller caps that have endured, and who knows. Um, so, I'm just banging rocks here, Chief. What's your
Oh
experience
man.
been like as far as analyzing uh you know cybersecurity?
So from a professional background,
Mhm.
um, I mostly focus on data transport.
Yeah.
So doing like network design and architecture. But I've got 3 degrees. I've got an associate's in telecom and data transport, a bachelor's in technology, and a master's in cyber and information security. So,
Hey.
um, so I've got some book knowledge there, right? I have some knowledge about the industry in general.
Yeah.
Although I'm not dedicated solely to, I would say more what people would consider to be cybersecurity focused fields, kind
Mm.
of adjacent to it.
Yeah.
But so Fuhat, we are going to we are going to talk about. See, this is something I want to talk about because like all fields of cybersecurity, like oh man, there's so many,
Yeah.
like it's ridiculous. Okay, so like a lot of people when they think cybersecurity, they think like CrowdStrike, a lot of endpoint companies, essentially endpoint protection companies, but there's like uh from a broader sense, an industry sense, like apparently like pretty much everything in technology is like cybersecurity when it comes down to it, right? Like it's how you design, it's how you architect systems, networks, it's how you segment. It comes down to like a, a lot of different areas are very nuanced, and you can have specialists in cybersecurity in like 30 different fields. Like it's just it's kind of insane. And it's probably the tech industry, or the segment of the tech industry that is going to change the most frequently and the most rapidly, which for companies can be very, very good if you're like the preferred player, right? If you have customers ingrained into your services, it's not like they can just drop them, right?
Mhm.
They have like a very, very high dependency on those services, because you can't like, especially a lot of the cyber security companies now are like subscription based, where maybe you buy hardware and you tack on subscription services for different types of threat prevention, detection, mitigation, right? Um, and because in the cyber world, threats are always changing. It's always dynamic and it's never static. You always have to have basically that latest information. So it's not like you can just buy the equipment and then like forego support or forego like updates or something like that, right? You have to have kind of the bleeding edge, and then that leads into more like AI based, machine learning based uh, detection slash mitigation response systems. Um, so it's pretty dang it's it's pretty dang vast. I think there was one I was looking at Fortinet and Palo Alto really.
Mhm.
But, let's see if I go to products, view all products. I think it was go to products. Look at the product list, right?
Yeah.
This is just Fortinet.
Yay.
Like, and they've got what? How many products is that? Like 50-ish or so. So the amount of offerings that you can get from for specifically just cybersecurity across various fields, or various subsections of cybersecurity is pretty insane. So what I'm planning on today is that I'm going to do like a brief overview uh,
Mhm.
of pretty much just cybersecurity in general, some of the methodology that the industry uses for cybersecurity, kind of what they look at, what they view, what they focus on. And I think it gives you a little bit better insights into how to look at cybersecurity from potentially an investment opportunity standpoint. I think my dog's just like jumped off the couch or something, but also at the same time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about what I think. Well, if we have enough time, I'll talk about a couple companies I'm most interested in, and kind of
Mhm.
the segment of where I think a lot of these endpoint protection companies could potentially uh, have their lunch eaten. So, um, because I do have experience in different platforms, specifically, like data transport, route switch, firewall, DPI, which if I mention DPI, that stands for deep packet inspection,
Mhm.
traffic fingerprinting. So it gets a bit complex at times, but let's just dive into it. If you guys have any questions at all, go ahead and post them in the comments. And Bacon, to you, if you have any questions at all, definitely like chime in, because um, most likely, if I can answer them,
Mhm.
it's most likely that other people have those same questions. So I'm going to
I
try to be thorough.
I do, but like my questions might be a little bit on the general side. So yeah, I'll try not to disrupt the
That's
flow
good
too
though.
much as I
No, that's
disrupt
good.
the flow. So yeah, let's
That's
light
good.
this candle.
Cool. Let's do it. So, um, first off, like, have you ever heard of the CIA triad for cybersecurity?
Not for cybersecurity.
Okay. So the CIA triad is basically the foundation of everything that you look through, when it comes to cybersecurity and information security.
Mhm.
And it stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability,
Yeah.
right? And the whole premise is that you're keeping the data confidential to the users that are supposed to have access to the data, right?
Mhm.
The integrity of that data is not being changed by
Yeah.
people that potentially they don't like see the data, but they could maybe like rewrite a file, delete a file, something like that. The integrity of the data is remaining the same, and the availability of the systems in the data is highly available, right? So those kind of like three premises is like the overarching, like, I don't know, like foundation that a lot of cybersecurity is built on. And if you're going into cybersecurity field or infosec field, it's going to be like kind of your standard go-to that you are always reflecting on when you're doing any type of design implementation, looking at your security zones, like your threat detection, mitigation, response, pretty much everything. It's all going to boil down to confidentiality, integrity, and availability of those systems and that data. So, and something that I have noticed, and I have a little bit of beef with, is that people really focus on potentially the confidentiality and the integrity part, right? Keeping the data secure, keeping it like restricted, access, well, you know, kind of like keeping it like so secure that they forego the availability part, right? And at the end of the day, like data and systems are no good if you can't access them, right? So it's a balance. When I did my capstone, I actually specifically focused on this availability part, and did kind of disaster recovery stuff. So, so when we're looking at different aspects of cybersecurity and different companies and their cybersecurity offerings, it doesn't have to be specifically like what we would consider like a cybersecurity company to have aspects of cybersecurity in it, right?
Oh, for sure.
It could be physical access, right? I mean, it's biometrics, like it's physical, it's logical, cloud-based, like pretty much everything. So let's see here. Where I'm gonna get, so like a lot of the cybersecurity companies that we think of, like, what do you think of? Like, what are some cybersecurity companies that you would think of off the top of your head?
Off the top of my head,
Yeah.
Palantir. I'm joking. All right, so to be completely unoriginal, with the opening intro screen share, CrowdStrike is a name that sticks out. Fortinet, Zscaler, Palo Alto. And then you also have like really big companies, like say for example Microsoft. Like, I mean, I'm not saying like obviously that they're valued necessarily by that metric or that, but like I think there may be an argument that they have a component of it. But then again, like if we're talking cybersecurity as like really broad, then shoot, like throw a rock at any big like company of any meaningful size, like, and they might say that cybersecurity is a cost center, but it's a necessary cost center. So like everything from a 3M to a I don't know, GE or any sort of bank, like, but Norton probably. Thanks comment section.
McAfee.
McAfee. But so that's me rambling, and this is proof that I just being rocks together.
No, but I mean, that's right. Basically, I mean, even if you look at like providers like Cisco, Arista Networks, all of them are going to have flavors of potential cybersecurity offerings within them, right? So a lot of tech companies, a lot of infrastructure companies, they're all going to have infrastructure in general. Think like server hardware, compute, things like that. They're going to be more performance based. Performance, architecture, deployment, operational, ease of operation based potentially, but they're always going to have like kind of a flavor of cybersecurity products probably built in. Like with Arista Networks, they have this whole suite of like, zero trust networking, zero trust environments, DC environments. It expands way deeper than your traditional like CrowdStrike, Zscaler. We think of like I like people mention like Datadog and different data aggregators, and I'm just kind of like it seems like endpoint detection and endpoint security, along with potentially like what I would define as like a data aggregator and data analyzer, has kind of taken the forefront of what we think about when we think like cybersecurity.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
And I I think that's kind of flawed. I think that's really flawed. Now I will give them credit that that is one of probably the fastest growing spaces, because it's been so kind of swept under the rug for so long that now everybody's like, oh, this stuff's actually important, right? So you have
Mhm.
this huge flood to consume those services. Um, so that was kind of like the base of the I'd say the overarching like triangle of cybersecurity and infosec, the CIA triad, and then we get into some more nuanced things like a lot of products are going to be based around this called the cyber kill chain, right?
Mhm.
The cyber kill chain essentially is the chain at which an exploit or an attack might happen. Um, so first we essentially have reconnaissance, and then we have weaponization, we have delivery, exploitation, installation, command and control, and then actions and objectives. Okay. Reconnaissance, a lot of times, like this is pointing out like email addresses, um, conference information, like maybe social engineering information, things like that. But because I have a because I have like a networking background, when
Mhm.
I think of reconnaissance, I think more of like network scanning, port scanning, looking for holes through firewalls, looking to see like if you can fingerprint a host to see what they are, so you can potentially look at exploits that you can use to um, take advantage of whatever type of devices you're able to communicate with. Um, Weaponization. So reconnaissance is like gathering information. Weaponization is essentially a building back or building exploits for the type of devices that you gather the information on.
Mhm.
Um, Delivery is delivering the exploit. That might be in physical or um, like logical form, like a physical USB, email, web, or data transfer of some type, right?
Yeah.
Um, you have the exploitation, the install, and then basically getting command and control of whatever the
Mhm.
device is, and then actions and objectives. And a lot of times, what happens is once you have that initial exploit and you get potentially within a secured environment, um, I kind of refer to it as like north-south defense versus east-west. So north-south would be like getting from the public internet into a secured environment or an environment within an organization, right?
Yeah.
Once you have that north-south break, then you start look at potentially you have a compromised client on the inside, and you're essentially looking at east-west exploit at that time, right? See what systems you can gain access to on an east-west basis.
Mhm.
So it's it covers a lot of different things. It can be from physical USB plugins with like an
Yeah.
auto install. It can be from email, a URL link or like a fake URL link. But once you have that initial attack vector or that initial delivery and initial exploit, that allows you to essentially take command, take control, and look at east-west vulnerabilities and where you can essentially spread to. Um, Now we've had some fun, some fun. What was the latest cyber security attack? Was it a
Oh,
casino?
big name. Yeah, I was gonna say I thought it was MGM. That's what I
Let's
want to
see.
say.
Let's see. Let me see if I
But
can
yeah.
pull it up. Um, cyber attack. So, 100 million. Oh man.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
and
MGM. Hey, got one.
if you're able to, if these groups are able to get in and start to move laterally and infect laterally, essentially at that point, usually if they're after money, it's ransomware, right? Um, it it's almost scary of like, if they're not after money, if it's like, say like a government organization that's looking just for info gathering,
Yeah.
that's almost like more freaky, right? Because then, if they're good, like you're never gonna know they're there, uh, unless you have the right tooling in place, of course. But so MGM, 100 million. And I'm guessing I'm guessing this was a ransomware. Let's see. Oh. Man, why are there so many ads? Jeez.
Because Reuters needs money.
Right?
Making the world go round.
Anyway. So we've seen MGM, we've seen, I think there was a gas pipeline that at one point that got attacked. There's been multiple like fairly big like ransomware attacks, which is it's almost good for cybersecurity stocks, right? Because it keeps on proving out that like this stuff is needed more and more. Like these type of insights and detection, mitigation, response, prevention, it's going to be a huge market. Anytime something like this happens, it's like I feel like organizational budgets for cybersecurity just tick up, right? Like, so I think it's something that's going to last a pretty dang long time. I don't think it's going to be, like a fad and then go away. I think if anything, it's just going to continue to compound and build on the base that we're at right now. So, let's see. Now, this is something that I thought was pretty interesting. So I've been skeptical, and I don't know. Maybe it's like I just try to find faults with stuff, but I've been skeptical with a lot of endpoint protection. Because and I mean, take this with a grain of salt. I mean, if you guys have industry experience and actually work with a lot of these endpoint protection systems, then like you're gonna know, I would say like how critical they are to your organization. But endpoint protection to me just seems like a glorified enterprise antivirus with a decent central command. Like it's I don't see I don't know. Other than like the usability of it and maybe like the ease of installation and whatnot, I don't really see like a huge moat in it, right? Because most of them are all gonna have like the same exploit libraries, right? They're all gonna have the same type of like fingerprinting. Um, it, it's hard for me to be like, okay, where is their competitive advantage against these different like endpoint companies? And being in the data transport field that I'm in, I've always thought that like eventually, like endpoint protection is very reaction based, right? Like by the time you're noticing that something is going on in an endpoint, it's like you've already been compromised, right?
Yeah.
Like you're already seeing the attack essentially. Now, maybe they haven't been able to install the exploit, obviously, but the path there, the transport there has already been compromised. Whether that's like, I'm specifically thinking over like um, internet access or holes within your network security segments, but um, not saying that endpoint is useless, because you will always have to have endpoint, because there's going to be things that you can't control from a segmentation point of making sure that your employees are not on certain websites, if they're at home or something like that, right?
Mm.
um, but when it comes to within your enterprise environment, I think eventually firewalls are going to get to the point where they have enough process power, where they're going to be able to, and they're already at this point and they're improving, but they'll be able to dynamically look at traffic flows. And they can kind of do this right now, but like it's getting better and better. They'll be able to look at traffic flows and identify suspicious flows and alert, mitigate, and probably react in real time, rather than waiting for something to happen on the endpoint itself. Um, and that's kind of, it was funny. I wasn't even looking for this, but that's kind of what Palo Alto kind of got at. They had this slide where it's like the existing approach to security operations is mess. Security teams are always reactive.
Mm.
And their solution essentially is endpoint detection and response solutions. And XDR's security extends all benefits you expect from traditional endpoint solutions product by further stretching or stitching together telemetry from non-endpoint sources, right? So like, if you're getting the telemetry from an endpoint, you're getting it at obviously the endpoint, right? The final destination of whatever the attack is like targeting, right? However, if you're intercepting and if you're fingerprinting the flow before it even gets to the endpoint, right? You're protecting endpoints like before it even gets there. You're able to potentially fingerprint malicious files in transit and block them and discard them, and then alert that, hey, you're probably getting attacked right now. So this would be a very, very interesting solution because, and I believe this is offered as a subscription service, and you'd basically be getting like daily updates or real-time updates. If you had a 0-day attack, as soon as it was identified, you'd be able to push the updates. And then they're also working on AI and machine learning languages to detect potentially the flow behavior potentially for like port scanning and reconnaissance, right? So to me, have I covered 0 days, bro? I will in a second. So to me, the Fuhat, love you,
Yep.
bro.
Good old.
So to me, I don't know, like the endpoint protection to me, I'm like, oh, that's cute. Like, I'm like, but long term, man, I think there's a lot more value proposition and things like what I would define as inline detection, mitigation, and response. Inline meaning that you have devices, whether it be routers, switches, firewalls, or a combination of all three, doing some type of DPI flow analysis on the traffic, being able to respond in real time without the traffic actually getting to the destination. That's kind of like, I don't know, that's where I'm at with it right now. I feel like endpoint protection is like this, like it's getting all the hype in the news right now, but man, I think there's a lot more opportunity potentially in the firewall protection. And as they tack on more and more services, those would potentially just be more subscription based ads to the type of functionality you have on your firewall suite.
Yeah. Bust out the ARPU.
Poo.
Yep.
Poo. So 0 days yuck on endpoints. Do you want Fuhat? What do you want me to cover about 0 days? So 0 day attacks, guys. I'll go over the basics. 0 day attacks is an attack or an exploit that is not known,
Mhm.
and it's not known until it's already exposed.
Yeah.
Like it's already being taken advantage of, right? So a 0 day attack is essentially you have a 0 day response, right? Like something, and there's been, I think, a 0 day kernel attack. There was a couple big ones over the last couple of years, and they can like wreak havoc for sure.
Oh yeah. Dating myself here, but Stuxnet, probably butchered
Yeah.
the pronunciation, but
Well, and Fuhat, let's see. So 0 days need more work, to be honest. 0 days will cause warfare, potentially.
yeah.
But I don't know, like warfare, I'm not really sure. It depends on what. Oh, yeah, it depends if they want to actually really break things or if they're doing it for spying, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
um,
because I
because
I would imagine that like an investable thesis around that would be really really tough unless you're able to do it in a private way, but also closely joined to some 3 letter agency at the hip, and pray to God they don't kill your contract.
yeah,
Yeah, that's my rough guess. Uh,
yeah,
yeah, because like anecdotally, rumblings were from some of the higher ups of, hey, like cybersecurity is great and important, got to do it, got to have it, but like for some people with more of a military focus, they either like to be on the more aggressive side of things, or they really love the counterpunch. And
yeah,
yeah, I don't know if there are too many publicly traded companies that publicly advertise that they do that type of thing. Like, hey, let's ransom the ransomwares. Again, I don't know. Again, my guess is maybe BAH for that, maybe Booz Allen Hamilton. I don't know, but uh, good luck getting that information from them. They're probably not gonna post on their financial statements. We
yeah.
get revenue from ransoming ransomwares.
Yeah, so Fuhat, 0 day isn't that it's been there since day zero. 0 day
Yeah,
is that the exploit was unknown
yeah,
completely
yeah,
until it was like nobody knows about the exploit, and then a massive attack goes out using the exploit. That's basically what a 0 day is. Um, because a 0 day attack could maybe potentially only get introduced into certain like software versions, right? If a software train changed and it was changed on XYZ train for the software code, maybe that introduces a 0 day attack vector into
yeah.
the product. So, um, yeah, man, it's pretty interesting. I think there's like maybe it's just my want to be kind of like a contra investor or like not agree with people, but I just like I don't know, man. I especially with the valuations being so insane. Like, what if this does play out right,
Mm,
and um these firewall providers are able to develop ASIC chips that are able to process and analyze traffic in such a way that you drastically mitigate the need for endpoint protection, right?
yeah.
Endpoint protection would still be needed, but I think the value of that endpoint protection would be decreased,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
So, and I think what Palo Alto and Fortinet are now offering endpoint protection as well, right? So I just I don't know, man.
Mm.
It makes me super hesitant.
I mean, my
The
suspicion is
growth is there. The growth is there, but like I
yeah.
don't think they're I just see a potential flaw, and just from an architectural standpoint and a security standpoint, it's going to be way better of a product if you can detect that mid flow.
My sneaking suspicion is that Endpoint probably gets bundled in with different subscription services that these companies already like do and specialize in. So I mean,
Well,
maybe I don't know how
so
that impacts the financials though.
I don't know about that because like just from my department, from like my profession in the infrastructure side,
Mhm.
no, none of those companies really have a lot of exposure into the infrastructure side, right?
Oh, okay. So everybody has their own
So
little niche, and
so it's a lot harder to get
mhm,
into um let's say edge firewall protection
mhm,
that Palo Alto and Fortinet do than to get into endpoint protection, right?
mhm,
Like Fortinet is specific and Palo Alto are specifically building firewalls that are able to handle vast amounts of traffic uh, in a somewhat highly available and redundant way.
mhm,
Um, and then being able to expand on that, and if they're able to further develop their ASIC chips to where they can process midstream flow, um, man, that's going to be very, very attractive
mhm,
in my mind. And it's going to be much harder just from the infrastructure standpoint. It would be very, very, very hard if like CrowdStrike came out with an inline detection response mitigation system.
mhm,
It's going to be much harder for somebody to implement that into their, like, say their DMZ zones or their specific security zones rather than just using their current firewall stacks.
mhm.
And I think that's what a lot of I think that's the advantage that Palo Alto and Fortinet have is that they're always already heavily ingrained into the infrastructure environment.
Yeah.
And if you're able to add on complementary services into your existing infrastructure um, with like a midstream detection, that's going to be a way easier sell.
Mhm. How do the finances look when it comes to these companies? Like from a perspective like margins and whatnot. Because
I'm glad you asked.
yeah, because
So
based off what you said, like anecdotally, my observations with like the broader market and company behaviors is so many of them from like the big tech giants to like smaller ones as well as even like retailers. A lot of them have gotten the message or have gotten the idea of hey efficiency. If we lay off or like manage inventories in a more strict way, things get like look better as far as margins, and our stock price has
yeah,
potentially reacted positively towards that. So I mean, like, because based off what you're saying, it seems like the capex is still really needed, R&D is certainly needed, and that this implies that margins should be somewhat elevated because it's tech, and we got software or you got subscription revenues, but uh the needed expenses may undercut that, and
yeah.
you're looking at
So
modest net income.
you're exactly right when it comes to R&D in this space.
Yeah.
Um, R&D is going to be like extremely needed, like heavily needed. Um, let's add in Dan real quick, and then
Yay!
what's up, Dan?
There we go, Dan.
How's it going?
The
It's going
royal
good, man.
wave, the turning a light bulb wave.
Quite a day. It's been quite a day.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, we kind of went through some of my first pitch, and then we're just jumping into a couple companies and gonna go over some questions right now. So, Bacon,
Yes.
margins, R&D. R&D is going to be very, very important
Yeah.
in any cybersecurity industry.
Mhm.
Um, you have to have, and I would say that your R&D, you should expect it to be higher than other tech industries because the development of your products,
Yeah.
especially in area that's always changing and that you're always reactive and responding to,
Mhm.
should be pretty high. So like CrowdStrike, you can look at CrowdStrike, they have decent margins, like 75% gross.
Yeah.
They're just starting to break into profitability, right?
Ah, yeah. Yep.
Um, and CrowdStrike is, from what I've gathered, mostly endpoint protection, right? Maybe some SIEM, like operational control centers, stuff like that. So you're looking at like, okay, like operating net profit margin is pretty much like kind of flat. So let's see, what's free cash flow? Free cash flow, operation cash flow is decent.
Yep.
Do I have operating cash flow margins in here? Operating cash flow template. Let's see if I can find that. Operating cash
I
flow
thought you did. Yeah.
margins. 38.37% for operating cash flow margins. So
Alrighty.
now, and CrowdStrike is still pretty new company. You know, we go to their income statement. You can see they've been growing at a very, very nice steady rate.
Yeah.
And let's see, where is their R&D? R&D is, let's see, is it? No. R&D is about 200 million, it looks like. What I've noticed with a lot of these younger cybersecurity companies, they spend most of their money on selling. It's mostly sales and marketing. SG&A,
Anecdotally,
and
yeah,
then
like that.
operations.
You look at gross. It's a nice fat margin, and then once you factor in SG&A, it's like, oh no, what happened? Why is operating so bad? And then net income, it's like, please God, please.
Yeah. So they're still kind of breaking into that, profitability range. They could probably cut back on, let's see, selling and marketing. They could probably maybe cut back a little bit on, but they're still in that high growth phase, right? So I don't know. It's one of those where like, yeah, you probably continue to hit it hard because you want to get as many people or as many companies entrenched in your product line as you can. But like, I don't know, margins are decent. They've been diluting a little bit, but you look at something like let's look at Palo Alto, and we'll look at Fortinet too. But look at Palo Alto, and this is already a well-established company trading at 100 billion market cap. I guess CrowdStrike is around 60 billion, right? But let's go to ratios and metrics. PANW, actually, oh man, I thought they were better than this. Shoot. So they have gross profit margins around 75% as well, and operating margins are around 12%. Pre-tax 15. So what's their operating cash flow margins? Operating cash flow margins is around 30.57, right? Let's go here. So let's see here. And they have, man, Palo Alto. I thought they had been, this is interesting. I thought they'd been profitable longer than this. So I'm kind of surprised because I've just been mostly looking at Fortinet. So if we go to Fortinet, and that's probably a more established player in the firewall space. Yeah, I have looked at Centennial one. I don't know. It's just way too early on for me, honestly. But
Sentinel One.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dan, are you smiling because it's a throwback?
No, I'm not saying why. I showed Jesse yesterday.
It's a reference.
Right. But so you look at something like Fortinet, and they've been profitable for a very long time, right? And their margins are just as high as the other players. But their operating margins, their bottom line margins have been expanding like really nicely. I don't know if, like, from my industry experience, I wouldn't say they're better than Palo Alto. But then I look at the numbers and I'm like, well, these guys have absolutely killed it. And they're positioning themselves to where if what I was talking about previously plays out, and they structure that, and they're able to take advantage of that and actually do progress further and are able to provide inline endpoint detection mitigation response, then dude, they could have like, they could have a lot of attack on services that they could offer. And those margins could just get better and better and better. So they're sitting at about 24% bottom line margins right now. Gross margins are about 76. And the interesting thing is that when we look at their growth rate over the last 5 years has been actually similar to Palo Alto. 24% top line growth over the last 5 years, and yeah, Palo Alto 25%. So it's interesting because I'm like, okay, well, these guys seem to be growing about the same rate. The thing that I'm concerned with potentially Fortinet, since I am a little bit more bearish on their product line, is that I'm potentially worried that the supply chain issues over in 2020 and 2021 pushed more sales to Fortinet because they had inventory versus them actually being the preferred hardware supplier or product supplier for the space. If that's the case, then we could see a pretty nice pullback in growth for Fortinet. At the same time, I'll pull up their latest 10Q here. At the same time, their service revenue is pretty much double their product revenue. So their reoccurring revenue is pretty dang good. And I think this is Fortinet, right? Fortinet, yeah. And I want to say that they had an even further breakdown of revenue. If I can find it here real quick. And a lot, yeah, service, security subscriptions versus technical support and other. And when you look at a company like this, so product is going to be like the hardware that they're selling, right? And then you're going to have security subscriptions or product subscriptions, like you have to pay so much every year for this type of functionality to be added to the product line. And then you're going to have technical support, which would be like, technical support, like TAC access to their technical assistance center, and other. And most likely professional services is going to be bundled into this other. That isn't really going to be, that's not going to have a strong, like, reoccurring stickiness, because usually professional services, what happens is a company will hire professional services for initial design, architecture, implementation, and then they'll cut them, right? So it might be like a 6-month contract. But security subscriptions and technical support should be a fairly good reoccurring revenue stream. And those appear, I'm guessing professional services isn't like a ton. So most of this service revenue is most likely sticky reoccurring revenue. And then you can see over the last like 9 months or so, well, year over year, we see a slowdown in hardware, right? Or a slowdown in product, from 468 to 465. In service, we see a pretty drastic increase from 369 to 494 for subscription based. And then in technical support and other, we go from 311 to 374. Now, the thing that I would be worried about is that potentially a slowdown in the product revenue stream could be a leading indicator that security subscription and technical support could eventually slow down, right? So what I would do is probably compare this to Palo Alto, and we can actually do that right now. If they break it out the same, we should be able to see if they have a product line slowdown as well. But like, with that being said, the majority of the revenue streams are fairly subscription recurring base, which is pretty attractive, right? you're not going to run into the cyclicality potentially of a traditional hardware provider.
I'm just wondering, like, with subscriptions, with the subscription-based, business model that they have when it comes to the revenues, are there any other like costs that are likely to grow besides R&D that I'm not considering that are like unique to this space?
Oh man, R&D is going to be a big one. It's hard because the margins on a lot of their operations is going to be insanely good, right?
Mm,
Like the margins on their TAC and the margins on their professional services is probably going to be 90+%, 85, 90%.
mm,
Um, so I don't know. I think the thing that I would be the most concerned about would be that they are expensing or putting out enough R&D expense and retaining talent to build a really, really, really good product suite
mm.
and able to keep a lot of that recurring revenue and
Ah,
also expand into different verticals with more recurring revenue, right? And that kind of goes into for the development of their ASIC chips for processing, their detection, like I would say like AI/ML detection of traffic flows to see if they're potentially malicious. And then their inline deep packet inspection for fingerprinting of malicious traffic. Revenues, America. So let's see. Okay, so product. Here we
there you
go.
go.
Here's Palo Alto.
Yep.
So and we see Palo Alto on the product side. Fortinet was basically flat, right? Palo Alto grew barely, like maybe a couple percent, maybe.
Yeah.
So like, yeah. And maybe it's that Fortinet is just churning through more inventory. I'd have to look into that more, but I would be very interested to see what their product revenue is doing on the Palo Alto side compared to the Fortinet side, and how that's translating to subscription revenue. And they have it broken down into subscription and support. So support would be like their Fortinet support, technical support, and other. And I'm guessing they probably have professional services wrapped into this support column right here. So it on a percentage basis, well, that's kind of interesting. On a percentage basis, Fortinet is actually, I think they're growing faster in their subscription services. So 764 to 988 compared to 369 to 496. It might be close. But I want to say Fortinet was growing their subscription services about 25% or something like that year over year. And I think that's what they were guiding as well. Let's see if I can look it up. Dun, 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 dun. So Dan, have you dug into cybersecurity stocks a lot, or at all?
The one I looked briefly at CrowdStrike.
Yeah.
Before more focusing just on the industry itself. So
What'd you think, Dan?
more of a macro bro.
Macro.
Here's an open question for people.
Well, like it seems to be they're going to have steady growth going forward, but it's not going to be every year. Won't be, when people look at charts, you'll see like, oh, look, they're going to be 8 to 10% growth per year. The industry, it's like, well, that's averaging it because there's going to be cuts. Like last year, when all the big tech companies were cutting, cybersecurity was cut right along with the personnel. So so this stuff that's what people have to, that's what I realize. It's like, it's growing industry, but also it is also at risk for, if these firms need to make cuts budgetarily,
Yeah.
they can cut back on cybersecurity spending.
Yeah, they
They can
could.
deal with the repercussions if it comes. So
I think what will most likely happen is, like, you can't just forego it, but they'll probably look for more efficiencies within their stack, their security stack, to cut back on spending, maybe consolidating vendors potentially. But yeah, it's definitely, there's definitely some risk there. But there's also like risk. What, like, if you cut back and then something happens, like, man, that's rough.
well, it's
It's a bad day in the media.
It's not the only choice to buy more. In like, these companies can buy more cybersecurity to protect themselves better, or they can buy, I think someone pointed out, they could buy cybersecurity insurance just so they can say, if it does get bad, something bad happens, they have, some sort of payment. Or the third option, I guess, is just to deal with the consequences of what
That's gonna be interesting.
something like pay ransom or just take the hit on your balance sheet, hire a consulting firm to deal with an emergency. That's what MGM ended up doing.
100 million.
Yeah.
Yep.
They lost $100 million. They had to bring in a $10 million consulting firm to help them deal with the problem, on top of whatever they were doing before the hack. So
I have a dumb idea.
Crazy.
The way how these companies pivot is they lobby and then they become cybersecurity auditors. The government mandates it.
There are internal, there are information system internal auditors.
Yeah.
So that is.
I was gonna say, it's got to be, that's
probably
have to be
a good career you could look into, honestly. Like, they are.
Oh yeah. On that front, if anybody wants a good career in tech and is interested in cybersecurity, do it, because it's going to be so fiercely competitive for probably the next 20-30 years. Like,
I mean, if you know information, if you know like IT plus accounting, I've seen some pretty good jobs for that.
Yeah, I've heard. Yeah, I heard that was a sneakily, like, quiet, like, dangerous combo right there.
Yeah.
For person's human capital.
So Fortinet, their service revenue was up 28% year over year, and it's growing at a pretty dang decent clip. Deferred revenue is now at 5.29 billion. So typically these, like any subscription company, since they are running a subscription model, companies might pay for like a 1, 2, or 3 year service contract or subscription contract, and all of that revenue is deferred until it's actually realized, and that time period has, like, gone by, right? They can't realize all the revenue up front. So basically, and I think if I remember correctly, they had their average contract was decreased from 27 to 26 months. So a little under 2.5 years, or just over 2 years. So they basically have that 5.29 billion in revenue lined up for the next 2 years, as almost a guarantee, which is like, I don't know, man. It's just, it looks really interesting, dude. Like, like, they're profitable, they're buying back stock. They actually, I think, bought back what's it, like 100 million or so over the last was it a couple months, between 40 and 50. So let's see, buybacks.
Share repurchase program.
Share repurchases, so at $58, and then at $55, and then at $57. So 50 to 60. Yeah. Guidance is slowing down, which is interesting. So revenue in the range of 1.3 to 1.44, billings in 1.5 to 1.7. Gross margin is still pretty dang strong. Non-GAAP operating margin is 27 to 28. Yeah, I don't know. It seems like there's a lot of potential upside here if they pivot correctly. If they're able to take advantage of the cybersecurity trend and they're able to really improve their overall suite of services, and then if they can get that in, oh man, whoever is able to get inline detection, mitigation response, and without a reduction in performance. Oh man, if they prove that out, it's going to be very, very, very valuable. I think it's going to be insanely valuable.
I think I got like an open question here.
Yeah.
What are some KPIs that would be reasonable in this space that you all would consider?
Oh,
Because
that's
like
hard.
yeah, like from my perspective, and I don't know the revenue model, but if the subscriptions are relatively uniform, then maybe ARPU is reasonable. Maybe.
Potentially, but like, potentially, but I don't know if it would be too distracting because you have such a broad set of services that you're offering to these customers
Yeah.
that one customer could have 40x the subscription spend of another customer.
Yeah,
right.
yeah, and
It's not like it's
my
not like you're
concern.
talking about 3 tiers on Netflix or something like that, right?
Yeah, 'cause
And you're going to be able to negotiate pricing discounts depending on the size and the spend of the company. So it's hard to say. It's hard to say.
yeah,
I would be more interested in potentially like oh man, what kind of data? I don't know. Like total number of customers, just the overall amount of recurring revenue, their deferred revenue, and their outstanding subscription contract time frame average. Right. There could be other, I don't know, there could be other ones. Like with Arista Networks, this wouldn't be a good one for Fortinet or Palo Alto, but for Arista Networks, what they do is they show you essentially how many like 40 gig ports or 100 gig ports are being used from their devices in various data centers. So you can almost see like the their port density and their adoption within the DC networking field. So it's hard to say. It's really hard to say. I think what I would be looking at is your product revenue at least, flatline, if not growing a little bit. What is the service revenue doing in tandem? If your product revenue is flat and your service revenue is increasing, that means that most likely you're able to cross-sell additional services or subscriptions for the same hardware, which can still be good. But you still want to see hardware adoption. So increased hardware adoption. That being said, we might see some type of cyclical pullback in infrastructure implementation because we just came out of a pretty big spend in 2020, 2021, 2022. Right. So I don't know. That's probably what I would look at and just kind of keep an eye on it. Right. But at the current price of like $50 or whatever, it's not that bad, Bob. Right? Like it's not that bad.
I swear, I don't know how that phrase just like keeps popping up. I don't know. I don't get it.
I love it. I
don't get it. I said it once, like in passing, and somehow it's like stuck.
Yeah. I mean, I think I had like my buy points for them were probably around like, I think it was around like 40 to 50, something like that. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's getting intriguing. That's for sure. And it's definitely not as priced like a like Palo Alto or a CrowdStrike or something like that. But it could potentially have just as much, if not more, I would say, tailwinds. But yep.
Yep. So,
Oh man. Well, if you guys got any questions, post them in the chat. I gotta take off here soon, but I will answer some questions if you guys got them.
what's everyone's favorite KPI? I'm gonna try and squeeze that in to favorite and least favorite. I'm gonna see if I can like troll that one into or throw that one rather into ICOM.
What even Fuhat? What the heck?
Current date.
You
Oh,
misspelled ARPU. Average revenue per user. I don't know. I'm trying to like expand the horizon and circle of competence, but like I get like fundamentally, the A in ARPU average, like a lot of stuff can be hidden in there, like the average net worth of myself and Warren Buffett is great, but like if a company's managing Warren Buffett and my assets and Warren Buffett leaves, but I stay, that average goes cratering.
Fuhat. Okay, so I understand what you're saying. Associates of Applied Science in Cybersecurity. Buddy, you gotta work on that. Come on. Like, I would check out I don't know, it depends. It depends on your current education level and your current secondary level of education, but I believe I'm a shill for WGU, right? So like that's where I got my master's. I've known multiple people that have gone their bachelor's and master's through WGU. It's flat rate pricing. I think it's like, are they up to $4,000 per term now, but unlimited credits. Let me see if I can find. I believe they have a College of IT, and I think they potentially have just certificates that you can get. But I believe they have a. There we go, man. Here we go. So, whoops. Let me pull this up. All right. They have a 4-year degree in cybercrime, cybersecurity bachelor's degree. So, and this is all remote. Yeah, tuition just went up pretty big, but 70% finished in 32 months. So I kind of like WGU because you can literally just like hammer it out. You can finish like, I think I've known people that have, gotten a master's degree. Like they had a bachelor's and they entered a master's program and they got their master's in 6 months. Right. So if you're dedicated and just hammering out classes, you can get through a bachelor's probably in like 2 years. That would be 16K. Probably a little bit more than that, but
Did we DCF this?
IT certification. And then also, but yeah, also IT certifications are great too. You can, I don't know, let's see. There are several different cyber certifications that you can get. It's really good for like entry level jobs. And especially, maybe some base level security certifications, and then getting into a SOC job, which is Security Operations Center. So doing like monitoring, response, escalation, stuff like that. Probably be a good path. And then while you're doing that, you could be getting your bachelor's in cybersecurity and then go into a more lucrative, higher up field within the cybersecurity environment. That's basically what I did, but I did that in data transport specifically. So, so yeah, if you just hammer it out, you can get certifications, probably get into a entry-level position, and then some companies even will pay for educational expenses. Another thing to look into if you're trying to get into the field, look for those entry-level jobs at companies that will pay for higher education. So good way to cover your college tuition. But yeah, so that's my shill for higher education.
Not sponsored.
Not sponsored, but do it.
It's interesting reading how the MGM hack worked, because at first I thought that they had somebody come in and like stick thumb drive somewhere like a movie, but the way apparently now with more info, so they called the help desk with like basic information about like an employee they found online, probably they think. So then they got passwords reset, you know, because if you call like, hey, my password's broke, you know, they might just ask you info about your personal life or your address. So then once they got that, they then started in the servers, they got, it looks like administrative privileges. So they could see what was going on, the local cyber people, but they got global administrative privileges. So it was almost too late. So then they just turned it off, right? I guess that's the next part. They shut the whole thing down because they lost control. And then they got ransomwared. And it was all over.
Yep.
What did they ask? I don't even. Do you remember what they asked for? Like how much they wanted? I don't even remember.
No idea. All I saw was it was 100 million.
I saw that the filing because I looked up the 8K. Yeah, 100 million loss plus the $10 million contractor cost.
So, did they pay out the ransom?
You know, they never say they will. They always say they don't, but I think some of these companies do, and they just try and hide the fact that they did actually pay. Maybe that was the consultant, right? How do we know the consultant didn't pay the ransom? So
yeah,
you hire some little small consulting firm to help you deal with it.
I will transfer the Bitcoin.
The Bitcoin, no, we want chips. The true NFTs.
And sometimes I guess like they just hack to steal info, right? It's not even a ransom. Sometimes they just get in the system and just grab data, and then they can sell it. Or do whatever they
exactly.
Socials, driver's license, whatever.
All right, cool. Well,
I want $10 million in unmarked chips.
Unmarked chips.
Yes. How would that work?
I'm going to do a resume and cover letter live in 30
Let's go.
minutes. So
let's go.
KL1.
Nice. I'll be good.
So I can do it and never do it again. It's the most boring subject ever.
Did you need anyone to
thank you guys for joining. I'm going to end it here. But yeah, it was fun. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thanks for hosting. Thanks for having me.